The 2000s, we focused on search. Like, how do we find information with Google and all these search engines? And then we got into the Facebook era. And now it was about giving up our data. Oh, I'll give up my data so I can watch that funny thing and do that stupid puzzle and find out if I'm a porcupine or a lion, right? And yet we were giving up our data. And I felt like that's not what this world should have been. We shouldn't be giving up our data so freely. We should be holding on to it and securing it because we're the owners of it.
Welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, and today we are joined by Rich Walker, the founder and CEO of Quik, a company he started 23 years ago to fix one of the biggest headaches in financial services, paperwork. We all know what that's like. What started with Richard and his mom building a product to simplify forms has grown into an enterprise solution trusted by wealth management firms nationwide. With 42,000 forms managed and 1.2 million generated every month, Quik is proof that solving an unsexy problem really well can change an entire industry. But Rich's story is much more than software. It's about privacy, intent, trust, and the long game of building something that actually serves people. Rich, I'm delighted for you to be here. Thank you for being on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
It's my honor, Marla. Thanks for having me today.
So happy you're here. And you're also just such a fantastic human. I'm so glad that we were introduced. What is the most exciting to you about the moment that we're in wealth management right now?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, everybody talks about artificial intelligence, right? And so, of course, that's very, very exciting to me, but it's exciting because it is transforming my company. I mean, I've been in business for 23 years, and I always tell people who want to be entrepreneurs, your first idea is not your best idea. It's the one that gets you started. And here we are standing at the precipice of just fantastic revolution in terms of what we can be doing and how we could be serving customers. And I'm more excited about my business than I've ever been, Marla. We are investing so much in artificial intelligence to enable things that we never thought were going to be possible. I can finally answer a question I've had, really a vision I've had for 15 years. And the vision's simple. I know how to eliminate forms. I don't know how to eliminate the need for data, but I do know how to eliminate the need to look at what appears to be a paper form, and we're doing it. I'm super excited about it. It'll come out later this year, and everybody I show it to is like blown away. They can't wait to see it. So yeah, I'm super excited about how AI is making things possible that we never thought could be possible, or we didn't know how it was going to be possible.
That is so exciting. And I love your answer because when I ask that question, most people say, oh, I'm excited about the transition to human centricity and financial planning and getting deeper into what people want. And I think everyone is excited about AI. It's so right in front of our noses. It's so critical. And you're immediately pairing it with a really painful use case that you're already solving. Do you mind sharing a bit more? Like, give a bit of a teaser. How is Quik kind of coming about? Is it self-filling forms? Is it kind of updating forms as things change?
Okay, so look, it really started in 22 when I first saw DALL-E, and then I saw ChatGPT come out. And I really started to see the potential for what was going on. And all I did was set an intention. I just said to my team on January 3rd of 2023, we are now going to be driven by AI. So we have two initiatives. Every person in the company needs to learn something that uses AI to make your job easier, better, higher quality, faster, something. And two, we're going to deliver our first product that's enabled or driven by AI, which we did. So in January 24, we launched our first product, and it really solves a massive problem. Think about a life insurance company like John Hancock. They want your business, right? So they're going to take in the paperwork, whether you did it with DocuSign, really neat and orderly, whether you did it on their website with the process they want, or whether you got a piece of paper and hand wrote all the notes into the fields. It doesn't matter how you filled out the form. They will take your business, which means they face a problem. How do they bring all these different incoming streams of documents into one process that's streamlined, efficient, and effective for humans? Well, today they just put humans on it and they type all that data in. There's actually a lot of tools right now that are focusing on how do you extract data from documents, especially like statements and wills and trusts. But because we're the forms company, we focused on the problem of how do you get it specifically off forms? And we delivered a product that can retrieve the data off the document. I don't care if it's handwritten, wet signed, e-signed, doesn't matter. We can get it off perfectly. So now we can give data, we can streamline all these incoming sources of documents into one stream that then turns the data into structured data that a company can now ingest into their system. I mean, that was step one for us. So now what we've been working on, and we did this for over the last year, was we built a solution for internal use that'll help us build forms faster and higher quality. And that first version will get us about halfway to the goal line. By the end of this year, we expect to have the full completed goal of having forms that are 100% built through artificial intelligence and process and a whole bunch of different tool sets that come together. Frankly, this is not an easy task whatsoever. So that will enable us to solve more forms problems than we've ever solved before. And I'm looking ahead saying, well, wait a minute, if we can do that, then we literally could go to a company who has 1,000 or 5,000 forms and say, just give it to us. We'll turn them over tonight and you can start using them in a homogeneous manner across the board. Simultaneously, we're working on a new web form technology, and everybody's asked, hey, can we do the TurboTax approach for a form? And if you're not familiar with TurboTax, they take the complex US IRS government forms and turn them into questions and answers that are more dynamic and responsive and more interesting, frankly. That's a really robust experience, and anybody could build software against a handful of forms. As you mentioned, we manage over 42,000, so we have to do it at scale for any form in the world. And we've come up with a way to do that so that the forms can be viewed in a web interface, responsive interface, meaning it can stretch and morph to the size of the image you're looking at. So a phone, for example, would be fine. And now you can create a lot more dynamic, interactions with it. So one of the things we have is a dynamic little chat window. Instead of typing through the form and scrolling through it, it just asks you the questions, you answer it, and it fills out the form behind you. And all of this marries up to a print perfect PDF that you can sign and have as an artifact for what you're doing. Marla, let's take it a step further.
Like what is the purpose of the perfect PDF? You do need some sort of a legal, but yes.
I can't stop companies from wanting their specific document filled out. So while I'm solving on the front end for how people interact with the document, provide their data, I still haven't had that company say, hey, solve for us on the back end so we don't even need the form in the first place. And look, companies are doing that. You can look at Charles Schwab and Fidelity, for example. They have built online systems to go do order entry, new account opening without ever producing a form. And it's great if you're willing to use their platform. Well, what if your data is in a place that it doesn't flow into that platform? What if you're part of an ecosystem like a broker dealer or an RIA firm that has a bespoke system? They have a custom user experience and therefore customer experience, which applies their rules, et cetera. And they want you to use that. So you're not going to use the Schwab system for that reason. So then how do you get rid of the form? You can't. And of course, there's legal reasons people still want a signed document at the end of the transaction. I mean, in other words, what's the artifact to prove you did the work? And that's one of the questions the entire industry has to answer for themselves. But there's another component to this. Is it worth automating every form in the world to these companies? It's not. It's not cost effective to optimize a form that gets used 100 times a year or 2 times a month or even 1,000 times a year if it's, compared to a new account opening when they're doing 1,000 a day. Yeah. So we're going to turn this into a much more dynamic opportunity. And I think that we could go further than that. I think we could actually offer the form through a voice agent. So imagine now you go to your doctor and the doctor says, here, fill out the clipboard. Or what if in the future you get a call saying, hey, Marla, this is the AI assistant for Dr. Smith. We would like to do the intake now over the phone. If you're willing to, just answer a few questions. And it walks through the form, asks the questions, all of which gets put onto the form. And then you can be prompted to sign it if still necessary. But they get to collect the data in the format they're used to collecting it. We just changed the front end experience.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're kind of taking on the journey of like, what is the future of forms? And several things come to mind as you say that. Number one, I've definitely also been in the industry where you're right. Everyone is like, if I am opening business, if there's going to be growth on the other end of this, I don't care if the data comes via carrier pigeon. This is kind of the way that we will go and do backflips in order to get an account opened however we possibly can. Question I have, when you think about platforms, custodians, very large, multi-functional platforms that serve our industry, how do you address friction as part of their strategy? They want to make it actually quite hard for you to use the same form for them and for someone else. It's very much part of them building their moat.
That's an interesting perspective. I'm not sure I've really spent a lot of time thinking along those lines. I have thought in terms of companies wanting their brand to be visible to their end consumer. So a financial advisor will sell American Funds, my favorite mutual fund company, for example. American Funds does zero advertising.
Good California company.
Yeah. Well, I went to school in Los Angeles. I worked in their offices once. How do they get their brand out to people? Prospectus, their brochures, ultimately their forms. And I've often thought that that's one of the ways in which their brand still shows up. But I don't know that it's designed for friction, because when we meet with the owners of forums, they are constantly asking, how do we make this better? How do we make this easier? Because I do think that there's competitive advantage in making the process easier. I mean, all you have to do is look at these online systems where you don't need a form at all to open an account. And then you say, why do I have to open an account with paper in the financial, in wealth management when I can do it with my bank in 10 seconds? So I don't know. I mean, some people are making it harder than it needs to be. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think that's so fair. And I'm sure most listeners to this podcast can resonate. There's quite a lot of firms out there that are still demanding wet ink signatures. You need to come into the branch and see me in person. There is so much opportunity here to make it easier. So let's take a little bit of a step back, Rich. You shared with me in our last call that you worked at Arthur Andersen. You were kind of living a consulting life, and then you became a financial advisor, and then you got into Quik forms with your mom. What pulled you in? What was the kind of draw to say, I really want to disrupt and make forms better?
My gosh, it's kind of funny to me, because the summer before college started, I got an internship at IBM working for the vice president of engineering, which meant software development. It was a division that did software. And I saw what software developers do. And I thought, oh my gosh, I could never be a software developer. In fact, as soon as I started school, I changed my major because there was software involved. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And then you fast forward, I get to Arthur Andersen and I become a technologist, not necessarily software development. I did a little bit, but I understood tech. And then I become a financial advisor because I was done with being a technologist, ironically. But as I got into the work of being an advisor, I saw so many different things that were inefficient. So I started automating them. That's just in my nature. I can't even walk across a room without taking a glass with me that needs to go to the kitchen. It has to be efficient, right? So I built an automatic charting system using Yahoo data into Excel to show these beautiful charts that I could update just by clicking a button, show it to any customer, put it into their plans. We had our own custom planning software. I even built a Monte Carlo generator simulation so that I could show them what would happen with their current savings rate, et cetera. I thought I was doing all these really cool things. And then I finally got my first client and I had to handwrite the forms. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not doing that again. That was a waste of time. So then I was motivated to build software for that. So I came up with a way. Honestly, all I did is I took an image of the form, put it in Excel, overlaid fields where the data should go from my database, did a drop down of the client, and boom, I had to hit print. It was a rough print. It wasn't perfect, but it was good. And everybody was sure, they took it. And everybody came and talked to me. The branch office, the home office, other advisors would call me randomly. I didn't know. Rich, how'd you do this? I hate filling out forms. Give this to me. And I rejected it for 6 months, Marla. I just kept saying, no, I'm not in software. And everybody's like, yes, you are. So I felt compelled to try it out because there was something there. And yeah, I went to my mom and said, why don't we start this together? And I built the software. We did our first install February 11, 2002. And then we knew it. It was the person who got it. They went from 40 hours a week of handwriting forms to only 4 or less. And they loved it. And we said, okay, we have something here. We should move forward. Of course, we did everything wrong. We did it the hard way, but we just kept going.
What a journey. And are you still an advisor? Did you close down that advisory business and it kind of pivoted fully to the software?
Yeah. So what happened is I joined my mentor in his business with the idea that I would buy him out over time. And after a year and a half, we were kind of falling away from each other. I wanted to do something a little bit different with financial planning. And then I had this software and I started to realize, wow, I should commit to this. So he was the one who suggested we actually split up. So we did. And then I had to make this choice. Do I want to be a financial advisor or run the software? And honestly, I thought I was going to be an advisor who just consulted with the software. But there was something there, Marla. And it's a funny thing. I felt guilty as an advisor asking people to pay me when I felt like that payment should have gone into their retirement account or towards their dreams and goals. Versus software, I have zero issue asking somebody to pay for the software because I know it's going to save them so much time and effort. It's 100% worth it. So to me, it was an easy choice at that point. I said, do I want to feel guilty and at conflict with pricing, or do I want to sell something that I love and could help people? And there's another aspect to it as well. How many clients can you serve as a financial advisor? Maybe if you're really, really successful, a couple thousand. I felt like I could help hundreds of thousands of advisors serve millions of clients better and therefore have a bigger impact than just being an advisor. I don't know if that sounds strange to you or not, but that's just kind of how I felt.
Yeah, makes sense. Exponential impact as opposed to kind of a linear business. And I think that makes a lot of sense to software founders. You and I, when we first spoke also, you shared, and you started with it at the beginning of this call, and you said, I can help the forms. I wish I could do some of the same around data. So you talked about the frustration about losing access to client data and identity when advisors are switching firms, when there is a change in the family or in the household. When you think about Quik forms, and frankly, there's a lot here as it relates to Nomi and what we're building in having a financial identity that can plug in, but it's actually only created and updated in one place. How do you see that? And why is that concept of client agency and control something that's personal to you and what you're trying to solve for?
So it was kind of interesting when my first client gave me their data so willingly. Oh yeah, here's my social, here's my date of birth, here's my account number, here's my holdings. And I'm not saying it was super willing. I had to go through many lunches and earn their trust, et cetera. But when we got to that point of trust and they agreed to do business, it was like, okay, here, Rich, I'm going to share this super private information with you. So that was the first part. I'm like, wow, this is great. Second, it goes on a form. That form was a piece of paper. So my partner could see it. Now, of course, he's in the business too. We both own the accounts. We'd hand it over to the branch office. Who knows how many people in the branch office might see that information? And then it goes to the home office. And again, who knows how many people see that information and who actually needed to see that information? I didn't. The branch office didn't. The home office didn't. The system of record is what needed to see it. The system that processes the transaction. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, maybe in the future, somebody would have to access it to verify identity or something like that if they want to withdraw money. But very, very, very few people in that chain really actually needed to see it, if anybody. And that's just a quandary I've had. Like, how could we make it possible so that you only see the information if you have to? And when you get to a digital world, again, why are you leaving it in plain text for everybody to see it and share it? And then, of course, transfer it from us to DocuSign and then off as a document in some document system. So I just felt like, I bet you we could get to a point where we can mask and hide that information and only reveal it when necessary. And that way we can actually create privacy with the data again. I also look back over history. The 2000s, we focused on search. Like, how do we find information with Google and all these search engines? And then we got into the Facebook era. And now it was about giving up our data. Oh, I'll give up my data so I can watch that funny thing and do that stupid puzzle and find out if I'm a porcupine or a lion, right? And yet we were giving up our data. And I felt like that's not what this world should have been. We shouldn't be giving up our data so freely. We should be holding on to it and securing it because we're the owners of it. And now all the data breaches that happen, it was just a sign of how we lost that security and that sense of control. So I feel like if from a form standpoint, you're sharing data, you're necessarily introducing data to people at the first time. Why can't we control that better? Why can't we lock it down better?
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at Nomi.com. I love that. And I feel that there's so many concepts in technology with role-based authentication and data masking and things that we know and take for granted that is all about retaining privacy and control of access to data for the purpose that a client wants it to be shared, only with the eyeballs that need it for the process of delivering value back to that client. And I think it's so important and it's really critical. I do think that there's been kind of a generational blip. I don't know if you see this, but I definitely see it with my kids where they seem to not mind the level of data exposure that they've got on social media and use TikTok quite freely. But then there's this emerging voice where I think they are recognizing how important it is. There's kind of a level of data ethics that seems to be an emerging mindset. A lot of new tools out there about protect yourself on the internet. There's this, blocker to kind of make sure that you can kind of pull back everything that's been scraped from you over all these years. And I think that's really strong. So you started out our discussion talking about how you are growing fast. You're embedding AI, and you've shared with me that you're keeping the team lean and very purpose driven. I love that you said you created an intent around AI and that you then kind of huddled the team around how are we going to use this new tool in a way to deliver more value for our clients. Can you talk a little bit more about your management style and how you're a leader of a software company and keeping it lean, but also incredibly powerful and impactful as you're growing really fast?
I had the experience of being with a dot-com roller coaster, one of these companies that raised $15 million and then spent $18 million. And if you do the math, you can't stay in business. And they spent money on stupid things, like $1 million on letterhead, double-sided business cards, envelopes that were double-sided. Like, who cared? We weren't sending stuff out. We didn't need to spend money on that kind of stuff. And I saw the frivolity of doing things like that. So when we started our business, we said we're only going to spend if we have to. We're only going to hire if we have to. We're going to prove it with revenue because we're bootstrapped. We're going to prove everything as we go, and we're going to test it as well as much as we can. So I would say I approach this from kind of a maybe somewhat pragmatic. I'm a super optimist, by the way. But in terms of how do I stay conservative and therefore survive, it's not by chance that we're 23 years old, by the way. We have been very conservative in how we take approach with things. But from a leadership style, I've always thought of myself as a servant leader. How do I empower others to be their best? And I think I've also evolved with that because I'm also a visionary and I like accountability. I want to see things actually go the way that we want. But I'll tell you, in 23, when I told everybody it's time to learn AI, that was a hard sale. Nobody did it.
Internally in your team?
Oh, yeah. It was really hard to get people to say, okay.
Was it kind of a broad remit? Like you go figure out which tool you want to experiment with? Or did you say, hey, you go and try OpenAI and you try this one and you try that one?
All the above.
Okay.
All the above. So really it was, okay, here's the intention. I want you to start experimenting. I want you to look for ways to improve your job. But you got to think about it. People have a comfort zone. They're used to doing it a certain way. They keep doing it that way. And they don't think about, oh, could it be better? Because that takes time to go research and fail or research and succeed and then change. So there's always some reticence among people in general to try the new things. I'm not like that. I want to try new things all the time. I'll figure out a new way to get to the grocery store if I can. Most people won't. So the first part was getting them to actually think to try. And I kept re-encouraging, reminding. But the other thing was I had to show example. Lead by example is a big part of who I am. So I went out and did things and then I would showcase it and I would show up to meetings and say, check this new thing out or check out this new result I got. And the more I did that, the more people started to understand that there was power behind this. And honestly, it took about 6 months to even get the first few people on board with trying ChatGPT, for example, to write documents or analyze things. But it did take root. And one of the early successes was my forms team. They had been asking me as CTO role to fix something in our forms process. It's a hard thing to fix. The reason we didn't change it is because it's actually really, really hard to change. For 10 years, they've asked me to change it. Well, I told them, go get AI to figure it out. They did. They figured out how to automate the entire process, and they took a process that was human to a robot that did it for $3 an hour. And now they were happy. I was happy. It was a super cheap solution ultimately for us. But yeah, I think that I lead by example and show people the way, but also I answer the question, what's in it for you? What's the benefit you get? And there's one other thing, Marla. I like to understand people and their motivations. I really love to understand how people work and what makes them tick, so to speak. And one of the challenges you have is if somebody's comfortable in doing it the way they've been doing it, they're going to question, well, if I change it, how does my job change? Will I lose my job to this AI? Will I not have a job because of it? And you know what? I asked this just a few weeks ago. My forms team is at risk of not building forms ever again. And I asked them, how do you feel about that? Well, what are we going to do? Oh my gosh, there's so much more for them to do. Because now their job is going to be more about quality assurance. Now it's going to be about better metadata. It's about improving what we could be doing with forms that we don't have the time to do with forms. So if we remove the bottleneck of building, there's so many more things they get to do that's better for them, meaning they're going to have more fun. It's going to be less manual drudgery, and they get to add more value to our customers. So I think you have to pay attention to all these factors when you're trying to drive change in your organization.
That was probably the best soundbite that we could have had in the podcast, because I feel that everyone right now is feeling extremely threatened. Wealth management is in particular feeling extremely threatened by AI. And so they're fearful. They're fearful of new technology. And they say, well, you're right. Just everything like you said. I don't necessarily want to try it out, because then what will I do? Just like your forms team asked. And I think the modeling of saying, there's so much more to do, and the what you do is going to be so much more powerful and impactful. It's actually bringing out more of you into the role. It's the adaptability and the resilience to the technology that makes it sounds like that has allowed Quik to thrive for 23 years and keep going and kind of continue to evolve and change your business. So I think that was so beautiful, beautifully said. I also have faced that at Nomi, where we are talking about discovery, and advisors are like, I love doing the discovery. That's what I do best. And our answer is, that's amazing. What if it was even better? Like, what if instead of viewing technology as a threat, technology allows you to up-level the advice and the discovery that you're doing, so that the client that you're serving is getting much more value out of what you're doing. So I love that. And I'm glad that you shared that example. We always ask, what is a conversation in your life or an instance that has totally changed your personal relationship with money?
Oh, my relationship with money. There have been a few. I got to think about this for a second. Growing up as a kid, I always felt, because I was very, very poor as a kid, I always felt that when people gave me gifts, there was some kind of string attached to it. There was some expectation tied to it. And often that gift could be money in a birthday card, for example. And that made me feel so awkward, to the point when I got a really nice gift from my mentor upon graduation, which was a $450 suit from Brooks Brothers, by the way. He wanted to show me the example of having a nice suit that would last, and it did. I forgot to say thank you. And I was reminded about that. My mom's like, you didn't even say thank you to him. And it made me realize, oh my gosh, I have this problem with money. I have this idea that if somebody gives me something related to money and financial value, I owe them something. So that was one of those things that just kind of woke me up to say, I need to change this behavior. I need to change how I feel about that. And I don't know if it was exactly that conversation, but I mean, that's the one that sticks out the most for me, to realize that I had a problem with gifts and receiving, and learning how to receive better, so that I could be more empowered with that. I'll say this also, because I went to college and got my degree in business with an emphasis in finance, and I love finance. I have since decided that finance, or money, is basically a tool. Like many other tools, especially when building a business, it's a tool that you get to use. So I look at it as, how many tools can I have?
I love that. It's so critical when you kind of stop chasing money and you look at money as a tool. And I think what you also shared about the instance that is a kind of a point of recognition about your emotional relationship with money, and how that has impacted you, and how it helped you recognize, there's a part of this emotional relationship with money that, now that I'm aware of it, it's something I want to address, and I want to kind of figure out how to change.
Well, and it also resonates with, like, I don't want to take money from others because I don't want to harm them. I don't want them to feel like I have power or leverage or strings attached to it, et cetera. And I don't have this problem now, but those are the things that were manifesting. So how could I build wealth if I have that view of money? I don't know that I could, if I'm limiting myself with, well, if I have too much, then I'm this powerful guy that controls people. No, I don't want that attitude. I don't want that kind of belief model.
That's exactly what you said about why you were not interested in continuing to be an advisor.
Yeah, I definitely think it plays into that. But look, this is another funny thing. Many entrepreneurs start a business with this idea, oh my gosh, I could get rich. This is going to make me millions of dollars. And I love that feeling. Like that's a fun feeling to be like, this is huge. This is going to have a huge impact. But when you get into it and you realize what you're really doing, you realize the human impact, how you're actually helping people. And that is what matters. Marla, there's an interesting thing that happens about once a year. People ask to buy my company. I don't want to sell my company. I'm not done helping people. It's not about cashing out and sitting on the sidelines on a boat. I really, really think that there's millions more people, billions of people more to help with forms. I was just talking to somebody yesterday. He showed me one government website that has 3,500 forms on it. Why can't we help all those? Right? Yeah. So I love that really business is about how you help people. It's not about the money. The money comes, it'll follow, right?
So inspiring. And that, once a year you get an offer and you turn it down. And because you're in the zone of creating support and help for people. I want to thank you for sharing a lot of your journey with us, sharing a little bit about what Quik Forms is up to, what you're all about, where you're going, and how AI is playing a role, and how your attitude and culture around AI is actually embracing it as an opportunity to be harnessed, to be a tool for delivering even more value to clients who need to find more value and to get rid of processes that don't make sense in this new era. So I'm very grateful for everything that you shared. Your story is so inspiring that you started this 23 years ago with your mom. You've been through ups and downs. Now you've just shared that you get an offer once a year to sell the business, but you're sticking with it. Everything that you share is just so inspiring. Where can listeners learn more if they're interested in kind of looking at some of this new AI form disruption work that you're doing? Where can they find you?
Well, come check us out at quikforms.com and also find me on LinkedIn and follow me if you want. I'm the Quik Forms CEO. That's my title. You can find me on LinkedIn. We are posting all the time about what's going on. That's probably the fastest way to learn about what's happening. And you can also come see Marla on my podcast, The Customer Wins. We have a great episode and learn more about Know.me. But yeah, come find me. I love saying hi.
Awesome. I'm glad you put a plug in there for the podcast. It's a fantastic podcast with an amazing name, The Customer Wins. I love it. And for our listeners, what does it mean to own your intent in wealth management? Which forms do you hate the most? When you heard everything that Richard said, what came to mind of the thousands of forms that you are used to filling out? And who are the providers that you are going to hit up and introduce to Quik Forms to get rid of those forms in your life? Thank you so much, Rich. And I look forward to continuing to collaborate.
Thank you, Marla. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.